Hey guys, Plasticon here. I'd like to kind of give you guys a bit of a, I don't know, more of a fill-in on some of the projects and such that I have worked on in the past and things that I've actually been working on as of recent as well. I do have a lot of custom stuff that I do. And one of the biggest things I tend to get asked about is like, how do I do it? Where do I come up with the ideas and all this stuff for said customs? Well, most of the time my customs come directly from a prototype that was never released. There are times that a prototype actually needs a little bit of love, and to me it doesn't get enough. There's times that some abandoned projects out there tend to just get pushed to the wayside, and they surface later on to find out there's quite a few people out there would actually like to have those. So that's why I tend to do some of the customs that I do. Now, when we want to get into the fact of like how I do the customs, I tend to, let's take for instance, I've got a good old G2 wind charger here. Now whenever I was going to do wind charger, I was thinking, okay, what colors would actually work in the G2 universe? How would I make him fit in and not look weird to the toy line, but it also still stay true to the character? Well, the big thing I tend to do is I'll go through my box of paint. I've got a large box of paint. Some of it is oil-based, some of it is acrylics. Now there's a difference when it comes to working with acrylics and also water-based, or acrylics and enamel, or the oil-based stuff. The enamel oil-based stuff, most of the time you have to have some kind of paint thinner to be able to get the paint consistency right. Sometimes you need to use it just to clean the brushes or clean a surface or something like that. That's usually what I use that stuff for. But when it comes to the acrylics are so much easier to use because they are water-based. So you don't have to worry about a chemical smell, you don't have to worry about any of that. So I kind of highly suggest any of those out there that are wanting to start doing customs themselves, you guys need to look into the type of paint you have, but also have to keep in mind of where you're going to be doing your painting. Or you could be doing it indoors, or you could be doing it outdoors. So that's just one example of what I tend to do in order to make a character like this. Now, if you look at him, he's got a very glossy, and he's also got a matte finish. The matte finish is actually acrylic. I actually use a water-based acrylic for that. And then the rest of it is a oil base, which gives it that real shiny glimmer. Now, you can hit these things with a clear coat afterward, but will really kind of bring more of the matte finish, or if you want more of a gloss, that's kind of what you want to look into when it comes to the whole painting aspect on these guys. Now, as for like head detail, I tend to use a very, very small brush, or I'll even sometimes use a toothpick. And sometimes I can use a toothpick just to kind of go in and just line, like say if I wanted to line around where his eyes are, because his eyes are completely black, right? Well, if I wanted to change them to like purple, or change them to a hot pink or something like that, because it kind of fits the universe or whatever, then I would take a small tiny bit on the end of a toothpick and kind of dab it in there, and then just very carefully line it around the entire visor portion, and then kind of go in and fill it in. Sometimes I use a brush to do that. Sometimes I tend to use a toothpick. Now, some people out there are wondering, okay, well, how did I develop that technique? I've been doing that for years with model kits. Something I've had a big passion in my entire life is building miniatures and customizing things and doing stuff like that, and it's something I have never gotten out of. Even when I was a child, I used to do this kind of stuff. I used to sometimes paint G.I. Joes. Sometimes I would completely change the character because I wanted to change his colors and make him a different character altogether, or maybe I just wanted to add a different uniform to them and such. So I know some people out there do a lot of custom Joes as well, and that stuff's really cool. I do love seeing that, and even the vehicles. Now another thing I tend to do is what I call rattle can or spray painting. And what I did here is I spray painted the silver on this. This is Jax's. This is my first Jax's attempt, and he's small, obviously, but he does have like a lot of silver on him, which I sprayed, and then the rest of it was all done with brush. And I honestly wished I would have had a brush or a spray paint for the wings and such, but this was kind of more or less one of my first attempts, and this was kind of what I also call a kit bash. Kit bash is when you take several parts from several different toys and you kind of just create your own thing, and that's what I've done here. These are knockoff guns that came off of some combiner limbs that I got a long time ago. And what I did is I drilled a tiny little bitty hole in here so that way I can actually attach the guns to his arms. Well, the great thing is I actually did the same on the back of him. So that way when he's in jet mode, you can actually have his guns attached here. Now if you do notice, those eagle-eyed people out there are like, okay, where'd you get those wings? Those wings look kind of familiar. Well, yeah, they do. They came from a knockoff version of a Victory Leo that I happen to have. I didn't have the Victory Saber, so I was like, might as well try to do some kit bashing, which I did. And that Victory Leo wasn't the greatest toy. It was very flimsy. It didn't really kind of hold together very well. So I kind of was like, take it apart, use it for bits. And I did, and I created his wings with it. Now those other eagle-eye viewers out there are probably recognizing these pieces here. Well, these here came off of a G2 Rampage. I actually took those off of him because, I was like, that one was a total wreck. It was an unsalvageable toy. So I just popped the wings off, and I used the little ports that these already had already designed, and I drilled two small little holes in the sides so that way you can actually put these wings on here and be able to move them back and forth, because they're there for airplane mode, and they're also there for robot mode. And obviously I went through and painted the face up so that way it looked pretty nice. I do like him. He does happen to have a landing gear in there, so he does happen to have all the proper landing gear as well. And the other thing is I pulled the nose cone off this, because this used to be, this was the body to an old Thundercracker, and this body had seen better days. It was in pretty shoddy state. The cockpit itself was in okay condition, but wasn't the best, and obviously with the rubber being completely gnawed through, because you had those little rubbery tips. I just pulled it off and painted it like this because I left it like that because it honestly looks cool. And considering Jax is supposed to be like a space plane, well, that's kind of what I did with this. I haven't gotten around to actually doing a full review of him yet, but he's kind of a kit bash kind of thing. That's something else I tend to do. Now there is one kit bash that I did, which was an extensive kit bash, and this required me to have an old G1 Red Alert and then an old G1 Sideswipe. And what I did is I just basically part swapped just to create him. So I made a G2 Red Alert out of him. It's not too hard to do. This kind of stuff is pretty easy to do, and honestly I think it turned out really nice because it's got all this, like the stickers and everything on here are really, really, really nice. And it's mainly like repro label stuff that I get for my stickers. You guys can go to Toy Hacks to get that kind of thing, so I do spend a little bit of money on that. Not to mention the G2 emblems, because the G2 emblems are really kind of hard to find. So it's just one of those things, like when you do a full kit bash, or if you do partial kit bash, or if you're going to paint something. Now I do have a few of my larger city bots that I am doing reviews on. I'm currently trying to crank those out. You guys will see those in a few months because those do take a while to get put together. And I also don't want to flood the channel. I don't. I need to spread my stuff out because I'll be having to go back to work pretty soon. And I won't really have all the time to do a lot of these kind of videos. But I did want to show you guys some of the cool stuff I do tend to get into. Like, when it comes to the whole customizing thing, I like to do kit bashing. I like to do just taking an old toy and just repainting it, because there's times that you'll get a toy and it will just be in really, really shoddy state. Like I had done the same. I did this with an old Ratchet. I painted him to make him look more of a neon yellow, so that way we actually had a G2 Ratchet in the works. And the thing is, a lot of people are like, why do you spend all this money on this, that, and the other? Well, a lot of these toys that I have here in my Generation 2 line are toys that were left over from my G1 line that were not in the best shape. So instead of tossing them out or trying to put them on eBay to get some kind of money, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go through and do what I've always wanted to do and finish out a toy line that had never been finished. And that's what I have done. I've done the same thing with combiners, and I've done the same thing with city bots and everything. These customs I tend to work on have a lot of love and care put into them. I do a lot of research on this stuff as well. So that way when I do create something, it's as lifelike and as close to an original product as it would be if Hasbro, Takara would have released it. Now I know the guys out there are like, well, what about like Diaclone stuff that never came out, or a lot of the other toy lines and such. Those are cool, but I honestly have to try to focus my collecting, and I do focus my collecting strictly to vintage G2. I did do some newer bots, like the newer Combiner Wars and such as G2. I did do quite a few of those in the past, and they were really, really fun to do. I don't mind articulated robots. There's just a point though I get to that it's like, if it takes me longer than a few seconds really to put something there, I mean, it really doesn't take long at all to really transform any of these kind of guys. And I love the fact of it being a fast transformation, especially when I'm trying to do quick little stop motion gigs, or if I'm just trying to put together something that, you know, kind of tells a story. I don't want something that's going to take too long, because if I do that, it will completely take away from the actual story itself getting done, and it also puts too much time restraint on trying to get it done properly to allow people to enjoy content that I put out. Now, I do, like I said, put this stuff out. I don't expect to get money for this stuff. I don't expect any of that. I'm just doing this because it's fun, and I personally think the Generation 2 line is kind of underrated when it comes to a lot of stuff. It tends to get swept under the rug. Like here, as of recently, we got maybe a couple more G2 exclusives, and then all of a sudden they're moved right back on to Beast Wars again. And it's kind of like almost like a regurgitation of what happened throughout the 80s and 90s and going into the 2000s is kind of how I feel about this. Now, I understand why, because of demographics of age groups and stuff like that. That's great. But I honestly think when it comes to toy collecting, you should focus on what you like to collect, and that's it. I myself, I like to do a lot of customs because I like a lot of different things on my shelf that are very unique compared to what you would find on a store shelf. And when it comes to like doing like Lego sets and such, I do like original Lego sets. I have quite a few of these little Lego space guys, like the little space sets. I love these sets. These sets are amazing. But, you know, I do go through and try to create my own stuff at times as well. I mean, I've got a gigantic ship sitting back here that I created, and eventually I think I might actually get around doing like a review of it. I mean, I know it's a Lego set that I created and put together, so it's a mock, as people like to call them. And to me, Lego is like the ultimate customizing toy. It's so versatile. You can use it for everything. it's crazy the amount of stuff you can do with Lego. I mean, I even used Lego to fix the waste on my G2 Pyro because I was like, I don't have the money to sit here and fork out to try to get a whole brand new toy. I don't have a 3D printer, so I can't really 3D print things. And on top of the fact, it's like, I don't know, I'm able to use my brain and just imagine and use the engineering and such that I've learned throughout all the years of working on aircraft and cars and trucks and tractors and all different kinds of stuff like that. And just, took all that engineering, like, okay, I can figure this out, I can make this work. Because it's one of those things, like when it comes to all the customizing. But customizing is a big thing. I got into customizing many, many years ago. And I just got brave enough, more or less when I got into college. And it's like, I'm going to start making some stuff that had never been made before. And I wanted to share it with the world. And that's why I do some of the customs that I do out there. And I know you guys out there probably are like, oh, well, that G2 mindset wasn't a real toy or whatever, And yeah, I know, it wasn't. But the thing is I created it because it was a hole in the comic line that was missing, on top of the fact that I think that's what Hasbro would have more or less done because of price point back then, because of popularity of characters back then. And the thing is, you also have to think they were also competing with so many other things during that time. The early 90s was a very mixing pot of experimentation when it came to toy lines, mainly because everybody, I honestly sometimes consider it you guys talk about the great video game crash. I kind of consider it as the great toy line crash because you had a lot of people that were coming off their Star Wars high back then. You had other toy lines that were trying to hang on to that. G.I. Joe was even suffering because, you have all these terrorist wars and stuff like that was breaking out, that was becoming more mainstream in the media, so that also affected that. And then you also had Power Rangers that came over, and everybody's like, oh, look at this great concept, which I kind of giggle at because, it's been around since like the late 60s with, Super Sentai and all that, Ultraman and such. And that stuff is awesome. I love that kind of thing. And I honestly want to see that stuff kind of continue throughout the years. I want everybody in the world to get more inspired by this kind of stuff because this is really the stuff that kind of holds everything together nowadays. Now, I do watch a lot of different customizers out there that do stuff. I honestly follow Adam Savage because I'm into what he's been doing for many, many, many years. The guy's a very, very inspirational man, and he's created so many different things. And I just like the fact that, okay, yeah, he worked on Star Wars, but, he also worked on The Matrix, creating miniatures and such. And miniatures has always been an inspiration for me because ever since I was a kid, that's all I really wanted to do was mess with small toys, take photos, take video, create worlds that don't even really exist right there on a tabletop or something like that, and then bring it to life. And years ago it was much harder to do that, especially when it came to a lot of the video work that needs to be done nowadays. Like, most people didn't have green screen back in the day. If you did, you had to have a studio to do this stuff. And when I was growing up, I didn't have a studio. I had a Polaroid camera, which I still it's funny, I still actually own my original Polaroid camera. And I had that, and then I got into VHS stuff. And VHS stuff is, really, really cool. And it's hard to edit linear. I've done editing linear. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, especially like when it comes to that type of thing. And I have done 8mm and 16mm films, and those are fun, but to be honest, nowadays, since everything's kind of just like in your face, in your hands, you're able to create whatever you want. That is really kind of a nice thing. And there's times that I do kind of scoff at it, but then again, I'm just one of the old guys that grew up watching the old Star Trek and watching, things being made with practical effects and not having some real. And that's great. That's cool. I don't mind that. I think it's a good thing for a change. But there are times that I really do think that they need to still incorporate miniatures, which there are times they do that with movies still today, but nowhere near to the extent that they used to. Like, one of the things that really inspired me, and I would say pretty much kind of pushed me over the edge, was when I watched this one show. I'm trying to remember the name. Movie Magic. I don't know now. This show called Movie Magic. And it was very cool because they went through behind the scenes and showed you all the stuff that they did. And one of the biggest captivating things I watched was the thing called the Terminator. Well, how they blew up an entire semi-truck in Terminator. And it turned out this was like a gigantic radio-controlled truck loaded with real gasoline, and they set the thing on fire and let it explode. That's how they got such a great effect when that happened. It wasn't some real truck that they did it with, because real trucks can cause major damage. It can be a very pricey thing, and honestly, it's a very risky thing, especially if you have to have somebody driving it. And when it comes to miniatures, you can do what you want to with them, and you don't really have a large hazard or anything like that to get anybody hurt with. And that's one big reason why I love that kind of stuff, because as I was growing up, I also like to build Star Wars models. I built many Star Wars models, and I went through and tried to make them as detailed as I possibly could with like the weathering, the blast effects, all that stuff, because I really wanted to like hone those skills, which is, like I said, it's something I've been doing ever since I was a kid, and I really haven't stepped away from it. Although I'm doing more or less like toys now versus model kits, I tend to really just gravitate toward the toy environment, because the toy environment to me is easier to deal with. And I don't know, it's a lot more fun. I don't mind doing model kits, believe me, I love doing model kits, but there's times when I don't have that time restraint like I used to have. Like years ago, I used to have many hours that I can sit there and put in front of, put something down and sit there and work for hours and hours on one model kit and not have to worry about anybody interrupting me and such. As I got older, working, your body not liking you wanting to sit too long or walk too long or anything, because as you get older, your bones just start to creak. But it's one of those things, like, as I've gotten older, I have learned that I try to pace everything as I possibly can, so that way I can actually get some nice content out there for you guys and create things that you guys are going to enjoy. I do know that there's a few things out there that I do actually have in the works that are very big projects that are pretty ambitious, but these projects are going to be slow running. But the thing is I'm just trying to get some content out there for you guys. You guys can all enjoy something new every week. And for those out there that are watching this channel and have been like, okay, you got the G2 cartoon up. I do have the G2 cartoon up. I'm putting it up there because you can't find it streaming anywhere. You can't, in order to get it on VHS, it's really difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. There's not many copies of it on eBay, and it's just hard to find. And I know a lot of people out there are like, well, I wanted to see what all the hype was about, why everybody hated on it, or why some people really liked it. There's some people that liked it, and there's some people that hated it. I get the whole idea between both. But the thing is, I'm trying to put them out there so that way you guys can actually watch them and enjoy them. Whether you like them or not, there they are. But, yes, I know they're copyrighted, this, that, and the other. Yes, I do know that. And if Hasbro says, hey, or Takara, or some Bo, or anybody like that walks up and says, hey, you have to take those down, I'll take them down. It won't be a problem. It just won't be a problem. Because I'm just trying to share something that is, to me, kind of lost. Because there's a lot of things in this world that have been more or less lost, swept under the rug, or just kind of goes off stuff and just forgotten about. I mean, I've had a lot of people watching my Megaforce stuff, and my Megaforce stuff is getting a lot of hits because that's a toy line that was not long-lived, that had a lot of potential, but they could have done more with. So, and they actually had an entire like lineup for a second series of those toys, and those never came out. And those toys are amazing. I thought they were really, really cool, but unfortunately I never got my hands on any of the prototype ones of those, because those are just extremely hard to find. And it's a toy line that I think that kind of died off before it even really got a chance, because it was kind of playing off the back of like Micro Machines and stuff like that at the time, and it was a very, very awesome toy line, but I think they could have really, really knocked it out of the ballpark if they probably would have came up with like maybe like a cartoon or maybe like a comic book or something like that to kind of just, you know, give it a little bit more beef. Or maybe they could even make like a video game out of it, and that would have been tons better than just die-cast plastic toys sitting on a shelf next to Micro Machines and everything else. It's already getting all this crazy hype. I mean, there is the awesome commercial, which is pretty neat, but I honestly think it needed a little bit more love than that. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of fill you guys in on some stuff that I do when it comes to customizing, when it comes to my inspiration out there, and just a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And I hope you guys are all doing well, and thank you very much for watching and subscribing and supporting the channel. And that's it for now. Bye!